by King Herod the Great. We already talked about him. He was the one who ordered the construction of the port city of Caesarea. If you could just move a little bit, yeah, you're blocking the pathway. Let the other group go through. Thank you. We're parting the sea. We're parting the Red Sea for the Reds. Okay? The Reds. We're parting the Red Sea for the Reds.
Don't be the tourist.
Green bus again. They're always leading the way.
Don't feed them. Don't pet them.
And so, as I was saying, it was the same king who built the port city of Caesarea Maritima by the sea. The same king who built Herodium, okay, his own mausoleum in his lifetime. And it was, of course, the same king who worked on the renovations and expansion of the Second Temple. And by the way, the Herodian Temple is not regarded as the third temple, but a continuation of the Second Temple, all right? And so during the time of Ezra and Nehemiah, the Jews laid down the foundations for the Second Temple, but it was not until the time of Herod the Great that this temple becomes what it is, which is much, much bigger than ever before. Now, you need to understand what Herod the Great had in mind, okay? Before anything was built here, this was just a normal looking hill, and you saw the hills around, okay? There's only so much that you can build on top. And the Solomonic Temple, as well as the Temple of Nehemiah, were confined to the hilltop, okay? Which was, you know, sizable, but not very big. And Herod the Great looked at that humble-looking building, and he said to himself, I got to expand this baby. I got to expand this thing. You know, this is not becoming a great king like myself. I don't think he did that to edify God's name. He did that to edify his own name. Now, how do you do that? How do you do that? There's only so much you can build on top. Well, by expanding the plaza surrounding the sanctuary on top. So if you expand the plaza, you have to support it somehow, right? How will you support that? By these massive retaining walls, okay? And so this is the southern retaining wall, the western retaining wall, also known as the Western Wall, okay? The Wailing Wall is just behind that. You see the ramp going up to the top of the mountain, and we will get there later on. Then eastern retaining wall, which is where the sealed gate, the Golden Gate is, and then finally the northern retaining wall. But the western and southern retaining walls were massive, and they're still visible here in this corner. Now, down at the bottom here, you see a paved street. This was the Broadway of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Okay, that was the central shopping district and kind of an outdoor shopping mall. And you can imagine all the commotion, you know, and the smells, the aromas, you know, and people are chit-chatting, you know, just trying to use your imagination. In fact, if you look over there on the left-hand side behind the red team, you see doorways, okay? Those were stores, folks. Those were shops dating back to the time of Jesus, okay? And in one of those doors, they discovered a table that was used by a money changer, okay? There was a lot of money to be changed, remember, because a lot of Jews came here for the holidays, right? And they also had to purchase the half-shekel coin for the temple. So that explains why there were all those vendors and all those money changers that were here. But in addition to those, of course, you would find animals, sacrificial animals that had to be purchased. You had all kinds of groceries for people that were here for the holidays. So this was the commercial center of Jerusalem 2,000 years ago. Now, take a look at the pile of rubble in the back there. This is a reminder as to how the street was initially discovered by archaeologists, okay? It wasn't this nice and smooth and clean. When they found the street, the whole thing was covered by these massive rocks. And this is a reminder as to the last days of Second Temple Jerusalem, okay? We know that. Josephus Flavius, in his famous, really masterpiece, The War Between the Jews and the Romans, I really encourage you to read that. It's an amazing piece of document about the destruction of Israel in those days. He goes into great length, you know, describing the various different events that took place here, which culminated in the destruction of Jerusalem and the destruction of the Second Temple. And he describes, even before the arrival of the Roman armies into this part of the country, the sectarian warfare between various different rival factions. how people were caught in the crossfire, how people were starving to the point that they had to eat sometimes the corpses of their young ones. Okay, so acts of cannibalism even before the Romans got here. And of course, when the Romans came here, everything was shut. Nobody could leave the city nor enter it. And over the next several months, it was a living hell. Just try to imagine what it would be like to be stranded here in this city. You know that there's no hope. Even if the Romans were to break into the city and you knew that it's going to happen, you knew that you would die a horrific death. And so as the Romans broke into the city and break into the city they did, they destroyed the second temple. In fact, that was one of the very first things that they did. They broke in through the Antonia fortress, they leveled it, and then they started knocking down the surrounding porticos on top, surrounding the plaza, into the surrounding valleys, okay? And so all these stones that you see over there lying on the ground, they're actually stones that were used to build and construct the buildings on top of the temple. And so as the Romans knock them down, they land and they leave this indentation that you see on the surface, okay? I mean, just imagine the sheer weight of stones weighing hundreds of tons as they smash their way through. It's really an apocalypse, when you come to think about that. Look at all the buildings, how they were destroyed. The entire city was leveled to the ground. Josephus even adds that the Romans would not even spare those few ones who hid in the gutters and in the sewer, which was under the surface. In fact, if you look over there, you see a gentleman in a green shirt leaning over this railed area. This is actually a pathway down to the underground sewer. Okay, and Josephus Flavius describes how when the Romans found out that there were several thousands of Jews hiding there, they forced their way into the sewage, and they killed everyone they found. Okay? And so in the last days or hours of some of those Jews, they were surrounded by dead corpses in pitch dark and stench, in the sewer underground. And of course, there was no hope. They knew what was coming was a death, either from the Romans or elsewhere. And so these are the very last days of Jerusalem. Of course, Jesus saw that. Go. Okay, please move aside. We'll let the other group go. Remember that when Jesus entered the city, on Palm Sunday, he prophesied. I believe that he saw that in his vision, and that's why he wept. It's one of those instances where Jesus weeps. He wept, and he said, if only today you knew the things which make for peace. But because they failed to do that, and of course we know that they would even crucify him, they had to suffer this horrible suffering that the city saw. And again, this is all confirmation of what we know both from Josephus and other historical sources. So this is a trace of the destruction of the Second Temple and the city. Over here you can see the other stores on this other side. They're all smashed, all broken. Behind Tito, the other guy that's explaining now, you see a cornerstone. And over that crack on the left-hand side, over his left shoulder, there's a stone with an inscription in Hebrew. And the inscription reads that essentially that from that corner, the priest would blow the silver trumpet. And this was one of the pinnacles of the temple. It was originally up there. Okay? And so of course back then they didn't have watches. And in order to declare the beginning or the end of the various different seasons, the priest would be standing in the corner there, and he would blow the silver trumpet, the shofar, the silver trumpets, to announce and declare various different times and festivals. And so the reason why it's down there at the bottom is because of the Romans. By the way, let me ask you a question. Why did the Romans bother to knock down these walls?
They didn't want them coming back.
What?
They did not want them to come back, to return.
Yeah, but I mean, think about this. It took them about half a century to build this building here. Why on earth would they even bother to knock every single stone from the top part of the temple? Yes, but even hatred would not do it. Even hatred,
they wanted to do away for good.
They sure did. But again, that's not, you have to have something else, okay, in order to do such a thorough job like that. Well, thank God we have Josephus Flavius. I believe that God had them put him there, for a reason. He was an eyewitness, by the way, to the destruction. And his explanation is that when the Romans set fire to the porticos up there, remember there was a lot of gold up there, a lot of golden decorations. That gold melted and settled in the crevices and cracks between those stones. And the only way to get to those gold nuggets was by knocking down the walls. I mean, God is working in mysterious ways. Remember, Jesus prophesied that there will not be a stone left upon stone. And so as they were doing that, they were actually fulfilling Jesus' prophecy. Of course, they didn't have a copy of the New Testament. The New Testament wasn't even written yet, okay? So this is really something that confirms the Jesus' prophecies as to the destruction, the utter destruction, I might add, of that city. So that said, please take something like,